educating some of our clients around the market of the moment. And what came to the surface is that many of you thought that today would be valuable if we kind of went over the framework of a listing presentation and what some of our top agents are doing at listing presentations to just kind of give you another idea and another angle and an eye into how people approach a listing conversation, some key points to hit, and some scripts and role plays around helping identify and setting value, and then overcoming any objections. So I don't know if you guys know, Rebecca has taken a few listings in her time in a past life or career. You want to share a little bit more about what you used to do?
Sure. Yeah, I guess that would establish credibility since I'm talking about the topic. So I got started with my real estate career in Hawaii and sold there for a couple of years with a top agent, and then moved back to Springfield, Missouri. And when we did so, we purchased a house with, I just was like researching real estate teams. I purchased a house with a real estate team who I later joined as their first listing agent. So my one thing all day, every day was taking listing appointments. I did it at a pretty high level, sold over 100 houses a couple of years in a row, and then moved into some leadership positions. So I've been on a lot of listing appointments. Most of these listing appointments were cold leads. I had somebody that lead generated for me, and I would walk into the appointment and had to convert them, typically competing with other agents. And it wasn't someone that I had a relationship with. So building relationships really quickly is something that I think is super important whenever you're talking about listings and you're walking into any situation, whether this is your mom's best friend, sister's cousin, or a lead from Zillow. Either way, it's important to establish upfront your value, who you are, that you know what you're doing. So that's a lot of what I want to talk about today. And then we're going to go into some strategy of what that looks like. But what I want to know first, before we jump in here, just because there's some new faces on the call, and you might put this in the chat box, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being I've never been on a listing appointment, and 10 being I'm really confident that I could walk in the door and convert with the best of them. How confident are you all on this call right now with your listing presentation? Cool. Thank you, guys. That is helpful. So I know where we're like, what our baseline is here. Numbers are all over the board. I love that.
Ken Hoover rolling up with this solid 3.5.
Solid 3.
You're so modest.
Oh my gosh. So great. That helps me know where we're going with this. Something that I want to make sure I make really, really clear here. There's no right or wrong way to have a listing appointment. And the reason is that I'm going to interact with my clients totally different than you're going to interact with your clients. So I may say things that you're like, I've been trained differently. My team does it differently. It's fine. What we wanted to do on this call is provide value. And I'm going to share with you what worked for me. And my hope is that maybe there would be one takeaway that you're like, hey, I learned that. And I think I can implement that. And Charlie's probably going to grab something different than Nicole's going to grab, than CJ's going to grab. So we're just going to walk through the process of what goes on in my head whenever I take a listing, whenever I have a listing appointment with a client. And I am more than happy to stop along the way, answer any questions that you have, just like put your hand up on the screen or throw something in there. I think we'll all get more value if we discuss this along the way. Is that okay?
Can I put a little disclaimer out there for the buyer's agents that are listening? Like, don't not tune in to this conversation because you think this doesn't apply to you. When we're talking about doing any kind of client presentation, whether it's a listing presentation or buying presentation, at the end of the day, they're both listing presentations. Do we have buyers sign buyer agencies? Well, that's a buyer listing agreement. And do we have sellers sign the seller's listing agreement? So they're both listing appointments. One is from the perspective of someone going to be purchasing the home. The other one's from the perspective of someone selling their home. So a lot of these ideas, tactics, and strategies apply regardless of whatever your role is. So I encourage you to stay open and listen to what you can take into your role as well.
There we go. So from the start of the listing appointment, guys, there's a process with all of this, and there's a goal with where you're trying to get the clients, and that's on the market to sell their house for the highest and best dollar. If you are chatting with someone about the value of their home, they're interested. And I think sometimes with listing appointments, we think, oh, I'm just dropping something by their house. They told me they might like to know their value. They're always interested because people are always looking to do something with their life, to better their life. It may not be now, it may be 6 months from now. So I'm going to use an example of the most recent house. Well, they're still under contract, but the most recent house that I have sold. And I want to show you guys where it started. So there's really 3 parts to a listing. It's weird because my face is over here. I have 2 screens. I'll move this so I'm kind of looking at you. There's really 3, where's my screen at? 3 parts to a listing appointment. The first is going to be like your pre-consultation. So it's going to be booking the appointment. And I think you can see my screen now, right? Everybody see my screen? There we go. I want to show you the conversation that I started with these clients back in, Nicole, your face is right in the way. Back in February of last
year.
year.
Email, is that, do you want us to see your email? Got it. All right.
That's what I want you to see. So I met Melanie, honestly, don't judge me. I don't even know where I met Melanie. We didn't have a relationship. I'm assuming she walked into an open house, and I sent her the following email back in February of 2021. I'll give you guys a second to read it. Basically, it's just a home value of where they're at. It actually might have even been an unsolicited CMA. Regardless, I had her contact information, sent her an email, and I end it with, based on this data, looks like you guys have some really great value sitting in your house. Love to hear more about your plans for the next phase of life. Obviously, it does us no good to sell your house, even if it's for top dollar, if you don't have a plan of a place to go. So kind of trying in the very beginning of any listing appointment to dig into their motivation so that as you're presenting the numbers and you're walking through the house, you have some type of an idea of where we're headed with all this information. So that was back in February, almost a year ago. She did not reply to this email. So I sent her another one back in October. So look, it's every 6 months, they're getting an update. Hey, here's a link to the most recent home sold. What happened in October, not right after this, it was probably closer to November, I get a text message. Hey, Rebecca, it's Melanie. Joe and I are ready to move. Let's chat numbers. I was like, okay, let's chat numbers, Melanie, here we go. So I wanna show you all, that, first of all, how does this whole process feel where you're lead generating in the beginning and providing value with numbers? Is that something that anyone on this call has any experience with? Cool. There were a lot of ones in the chat, so that's fine if you don't have experience with this. What we're trying to do during the listing process is there's 3 things that in my head that I'm always trying to think about. The first is I want to educate my clients, which is exactly what I'm doing with these emails. Did you know you have value in your house? Did you know that homes are selling? Did you know your neighbor just sold? So always providing value and educating your client that way. The second thing I want to do is I want to earn trust. I'm on your side, whether I know you or not. It's really, really important that you see me as a professional and that you trust my opinion. So I'm painting myself, we say this a lot, as the economist of choice. I'm chatting numbers. I'm a good person. I want you to trust me. I want you to know that I know how to sell your house. And the third thing that we're always doing is we're always asking for referrals. So it wasn't in this email, but there was another one that I'd sent to Melanie and Joe that just said, I think it was between February and October, hey, we've got some people looking in the area. If you know of any neighbors that want to sell, let me know. You're always asking for referrals because it helps them understand that you're constantly doing business. They're going to use you once every 7 years, and you want their minds to start going, oh yeah, Rebecca, even if she's only met me once at a random open house, it's important that she starts to see me that way in the very beginning of the process. So that's pre-appointment. There's a few things that you have to do to get ready for a listing appointment. One of the most important is you have to understand the value of the home that you're going to see. For me, there's a few different ways that I'm going to run numbers at the beginning. Let me stop sharing my screen so I can see your guys' faces, and we'll pull the numbers back up in a second. Hey, hi everybody. So for me, there's a few things that I have to do before I go on the listing appointment. The first is prepare all of the marketing documents. Whether this is someone that I know or don't know, they're getting a resume from me. And there's 2 different types of resumes that I use depending on the client that I have. I have a paper resume that's just got, hey, this is me, this is my team, this is our office, whatever your value proposition is. You're a business professional and you're running a business, and you want your clients, whether you know them or it's your mom's sister's best friend, to understand that you're a professional and you're setting yourself apart by showcasing who you are, what you've done, what your numbers look like. So resume, you can do it either in a physical PDF resume, depending on how far out the listing appointment is scheduled, you can mail it. I've also seen some people have some really big success with video resumes where it's just hey, this is who I am, especially if it's an unmet person. It can be helpful to get in front of them that way and give them a little bit of a taste of who you are and where you're at. Step number 1. Oh, was somebody going to say something?
Tamara just asked in the comments, can you say the second and third thing again, or screen was froze?
Sure, second and third thing. So what I was saying was throughout the listing process, pre-listing, there's 3 things that are really important. The first is painting yourself as the economist of choice and making sure they understand your value. The second is building trust with the client. So you've got to educate them. You have to help them understand that you're the one that should be educating them. And then the third is asking for referrals. That answer your question, Tamara? So that looks different at different points of the process. No problem, sister. So before you're going on the listing appointment, you guys, one of the most important things you can do is you've got to be prepared to know what you're walking into. So there's a few questions that you should always ask your clients, or that I always ask my clients before I'm walking in the door. The first is, hey, Joe and Melanie, I see that you've owned your house for the last 4 years. Have you guys made any improvements on it? Just as I'm running numbers, I want to understand a little bit of where we're coming from. What that does is it sets you up not to walk into who knows what. You may pull numbers and say it's a 300 and they've turned it into a 500. We don't know. So you want to make sure that you understand what have they done. What that also does, you guys, is it starts to help you understand where their value is. So if they're like, oh my gosh, we replaced all the carpets 7 years ago and it looks so good. You're like, okay, we're starting to understand that we may need to mirror match a little bit differently than if Joe says, I just redid all the bathrooms and we spent $40,000 on a kitchen remodel. Those are very different listing appointments because they're going to have very different places of value, right? So you need to start understanding your numbers. That's one question that I always ask up front. Have you done any updates? Another question that I really like to ask, and this is just me, I want to understand how much they've been watching the market. I want to understand, have you seen any for sale signs go up? Have you guys been chatting with neighbors? Because what that's going to do is help me position how soft or hard I can be whenever we start chatting numbers. This may be a little bit of PTSD for me, but whenever I was selling, and that was my one thing, I was mostly working with people who were either bringing money to the table or trying to come across at like I'm trying to break even. I'm not even hoping to make money on my house. I'm just trying to get there without having to pay someone to purchase my property. So it's helpful even still in this market where people are making good money to understand what they know about the market, because am I going to spend 30 minutes sitting down with you on my computer looking at numbers, or do you really have a pretty good idea and you've been watching and opening all the emails that I've been sending for the last year on how much your house is worth? So knowing what they've done and knowing what they know are both really important before you walk in the door. Thumbs up. I see note taking. I feel so professional. So at the actual listing appointment, like Matt said, it can be really helpful to have someone go with you for a few different reasons. One, I saw a lot of people who were rating their listing presentation under a 5. So when I got started, you guys, I had somebody go with me for, I bet, 20 listing appointments. I watched him do some, I did some myself, we did them together. It's a process and it's an education. So don't feel weird if you've got somebody that wants to sell their house and you need to tap your team leader, somebody else on this call to come help you have those conversations. It's not rocket science, and it can be really scary when you're helping someone figure out the value of their home, which is what a listing presentation is. So at the actual presentation, my flow of things, if you want to call it that, it is the exact same 3 things that I was trying to do pre-listing presentation. Number 1, we're talking numbers. I'm establishing my value as the economist of choice while I'm at the home, which is very different than online. The second thing I want to do is establish trust, help them understand that they can trust me. And the third thing that we want to do is ask for referrals, but it's different in person than it is online. So when I get to the house, any listing appointment, I'm going to kind of just go over like the process of it. And then I want to pause and have you guys ask some questions. So first thing you do, you're going to knock on the door, and then you're going to step back from the door. The reason you step back from the door is so you're not straight up in somebody's face. I've had some really awkward conversations immediately whenever somebody opens the door and 5 dogs ran out because I was too close to the door. You think it doesn't matter? It does. It's important that you step back and give people their space. When I walk in someone's home, I always shake everyone's hand, meet both the husband and the wife, because prior to the listing appointment, I've asked that they both be at the house because they're both decision makers. Sometimes one or the other thinks they need to be the only one home, but you want all parties present at the property whenever you're having this conversation. It's really important. Charlie, I would always walk in the door and say, hey guys, you mind if I set my stuff down? And I'm going to go strategically set my bag and my purse, my computer down at the place that I want to have a conversation. In most homes, that's the dining room table because it's a professional area that we can sit, we can look at numbers. Sometimes, and you all probably know this as buyer's agents, there may not be a kitchen table. It's a weird setup. They've got stuff all over the table and they're going to feel awkward clearing off the table, at which point you find a different location. But I'm establishing that I'm kind of in charge of this conversation. And again, I'm the business person in the room. And later we're going to come back and sit at this said kitchen table. So the next part of my presentation, and I've heard people do it several different ways, is to ask for a tour of the home. There are lots of agents that like to go see the house by themselves. And I think it's a difference of personality. For me, the 10 minutes of walking the home with the client is where I'm going to get to know them and understand their motivations. And a lot of times we're even working through objections as I'm seeing the house. So typically I'll walk in, hey, Charlie, do you mind if I set my stuff down at the kitchen table like I own the place? Oh, ha, ha, make a joke. Everybody's happy. We're loosey-goosey. Now I say, I would love to have a tour of your property. Everything looks great. I'm going to take notes as we go. So I've got my notebook. I'm taking notes. And a few things that I'm taking notes on are things they point out that they love about their house or they've updated. And the reason that I'm taking those notes is twofold. One, when we go back and we sit at the kitchen table, I want to remember what was most important to them about their house so I can mirror match and bring up those awesome new carpets that they put in. The second thing I'm doing is I'm taking notes because they're going to remember that we've already had these conversations. And when I go to write my listing remarks, I'm going to have no idea what year they replaced the darn hot water heater, right? So I'm taking notes about what I can put in the listing description to help them feel like they've been heard, they've been seen, they were a part of the marketing process. So what'll happen a lot of times whenever you're walking the house with people is they start to disclose things. And they'll tell you what they love about the house, what they don't love about the house, what they wish they could change about the house. And this buyer's agents is where you start to have a little bit of I'm starting to understand a little bit more about their motivation, about what they're looking for in their next house. It's another reason I like to walk the property with them, because I feel like they're sharing. They're telling me that they haven't updated their daughter's room, but she's 7 now, and that's why we want to move. So we're walking the house. I'm asking questions. A few questions that I like to ask while we're walking is same thing. Tell me, so you guys said you updated the bathroom. Why was that important to you? About how long ago did you do that? One thing that's really interesting to figure out on the listing appointment, and this is coming up a little bit more now in this market than it has been, how handy are we? So when we get into the sale process, and someone asks us to make some repairs to the home, is that going to be a really, really big deal that I need to tread lightly on? Or is Joe super handy and we don't care? Like, we don't need to make repairs now because Joe's going to make them all while we're under contract. If I know some of these things about your family dynamics, about how comfortable you are, that's going to be really helpful. So we're walking through the property. We're done walking through the property. They've told me all the things. I have a whole page of notes and I say, hey guys, let's sit down at the kitchen table and chat numbers just a little bit. This is the most important part of the listing process, because this is where you're going to help them understand the value that they currently have in their home, and that I'm not establishing value. The market is establishing the value. And this is probably a whole nother 30-minute call about how to present a CMA. But for me, I have 2 ways that I've got the CMA with me. The first is I've printed some information that I can leave with them, because I think a lot of people find value in printed information. It seems like it's not just coming off the top of my head, even if I'm the one that pulled the numbers. So printed information is really important to bring with you. I also always bring my computer, because it seemed like half the time I would walk in the house and be really confident that I was listing a 300, and then it would not be a 300 because they forgot to tell me that they made a bunch of updates. So I always would bring my computer. And let me see if I can share my screen really quickly with you all.
Hey, real quick, I know that we're coming right up against 9:30, and if you guys need to bounce, that's fine. We're recording this. We can send you the link of the recording as well. And if you'd like to stay, feel free to stick around. And Rebecca, just gonna give you the keep the baton.
All right. I'm going to wrap this up in about 5 minutes. And if we want to have a full CMA conversation at some point, we can. So what I would have done prior to the listing appointment is I would have run numbers in a few different ways to hopefully understand what I think the clients already know about the house, and then be able to present this information in a really helpful way. So I would say, hey, Ken, if it's okay with you guys, what I've done is I've pulled some numbers just on Farmington Meadows to make sure that we all understand like what the neighbors' houses are selling for. And a lot of times whenever appraisers come to establish value at the property, because most likely our buyer's going to get a loan, they're going to pull these numbers. So I want you to have a really good idea of the houses that have sold most recently and where we're at with things. Something that I would always advise to do is to go back when you're pulling numbers for a full 360 days in any given area. The reason is sometimes buyers say that house just sold up the street a month ago at $325,000. And if I only pull CMA for the last 90 days, I'm not going to catch that. But in their heads, they thought it was 3 months ago and it was really like almost a full year ago. So I always advise to pull numbers a full 12 months and then go in and you try to present numbers in a way that it's the true comparables that an appraiser will use, which is really not going to be anything more than 6 months old. So I'd sit down at the table, I'd say, hey guys, here's the houses that I've pulled. This is everything that is listing, active, or under contract in your neighborhood. And we're just going to start looking at numbers. And I'm going to say, so compared to this house, you guys, I want you to just tell me your thoughts as we're going through there. Have you been in these houses? What do you know? We're looking, we're talking, we're comparing our bathroom to this bathroom that has sold. What do you love about it? What do you hate about it? And they're seeing the numbers and they're starting to understand, hopefully, because they've been educated for the last year from all these emails. They're starting to understand the value of their property and where we need to list it at. So we're looking at pictures, we're seeing things that have sold. And oh, did somebody say something? Typically how I close any listing appointment, you guys, is this is the sheet that that I take with me. Oh shoot, that's not what I want. This is the sheet that I take with me and we have on the table. Where is it? Ah. It's numbers, and the likelihood that at least one person in a marriage really likes numbers is pretty high. And what I've found is typically the person that gave me the tour of the house and I've been chatting with the whole time is not the numbers person, because they're a really high eye. They want to connect, they want to have fun. And whenever you pull up the market analysis with the actual numbers, the other spouse starts chatting with you, and they're the one that's going to help you really nail down the value that they want to list their house at and that the market says their home is worth. So this isn't exactly what I wanted to share, but I typically have this number sheet on the table printed in front of me, and we're looking at everything from price per square foot to what everything else has sold at. And once they've seen the pictures, we just ask the question, so based on everything you've seen, what do you all feel a buyer would value your home at? And then they start talking. So I always try to close all of my listing appointments with a seller's net sheet. So that's another form that we can look at and talk through, where they understand if we've all decided that, yep, $300,000 is a pretty fair price for the house, we can get a good idea of how much we're paying off and really how much they're going to take to purchase the house that they're going to buy whenever we sell this one.
Quick question on that listing walkthrough. It's not coming to me, but I feel like there's some sort of like I don't know if it's called Ford or where you ask about family, occupation, hobbies, like to build that report. Does anybody remember what that's called?
The Ford technique, family, occupation, recreation, and dreams.
Exactly. So is that something that you still encourage that we kind of do throughout that presentation to build that rapport first and foremost?
Absolutely, Charlie. And one of the things that I may be doing you all a disservice at, there are processes and there's questions that you should ask. And the Ford method is great for me, I'd kind of done it enough that I know as I'm walking the house, I'm asking about the dogs, we're seeing where all the pets stay. And those are things that are super important. That's the relationship part of it. And Ford is a really good system and process to help you fill in the blanks there.
Something that I've had to learn over many failures, I guess, is making sure that that Ford deal is building the relationship with them, although it's about them and not about you. For years, I used to try to relate everything back to me and my life, and you realize that they don't really care about your life and they want you to talk about them and their life. So the Ford is really good for that, but just make sure that you don't keep relating it back to yourself. And I used to fall down that trap, and it's hard not to, because you're trying to relate to them to get them to be like, that's the one, you know, and that's not going to be the one.
I love that. The less that I can talk in an appointment, the better. You're guiding the conversation the whole time because you're the expert, you're the business professional, and they want to hear from you. But I want to leave that conversation and have said like maybe 7 minutes worth of content, really purposeful content. Talk the whole time.
Example would be like, you know, where did you grow up? And then be like, me too. Oh, that's where I grew up too. Like, you know, and then like, oh, like, did you, you know, or where'd you go to school at? I went there too. What, you know, did you have this teacher? I had that. That was my favorite teacher, you know, and then next thing you know, you just hijacked the whole conversation that was supposed to be about them to get them to love you. And now you leave and they're just like, yeah, I mean, yeah, nice guy. And then somebody else comes in and does the process correctly and they're blown away by it. And then you get the call a day later, or you call back and you find out you didn't get picked. And you're just like, I can't figure it out why. Like they loved me when I left there, and they really did.
You know, that reminds me of the one that, you know, we always think about the one that got away. And I remember there was an appointment, I did exactly what you just said. I was relating, I was rapporting, I was totally vibing, and they had asked some questions, and I said, you know, I don't recall exactly what I did. When I called to see where they were at, they said, we decided to go with someone else. And I said, can you help me understand kind of, so I can get better, what caused you to choose and go the other direction? They're like, well, they had a staging plan. They told us all the repairs we needed to do. Like they broke it down for us right there. And I was like, cool. All right. I didn't want to like preemptively start telling them stuff to do before we had the listing, but that's exactly what they were looking for. And I didn't hear it.
What's
that's
the most
on me.
important part to you of this process is a question that I would ask. What's the most important thing here? Are we trying to make money? Are we trying to get out fast? Does this need to be easy? Because it's a totally different conversation. And a lot of times you can get that information at the front side of the call before you even walk into the appointment, which is going to change the different marketing collateral. If they're like, I need to make the highest and best price, I'm bringing stuff on the stager, I'm bringing stuff on the photographer, I have a whole listing process. If they're like, let's go, I want to sell it for like right now, yesterday, maybe I'm bringing information on the Keller Williams new offer program that we have where they buy the house for cash. So there's a lot of discovery on the front side of it that can set you up to be the best listing agent that they want. Because it's different. You're different to different people. You get to use all your multiple personalities.
I have a worksheet that I follow, and I don't have the worksheet memorized, but when I'm sitting down and I know that they're wanting to do a listing presentation, I go through I fill it out. I just fill it out right there, which is, you know, the address, the name, the who else, you know, have you sold a house before? What were 3 things that you liked about the sale when that happened? What were 3 things that you didn't like about it? What are 3 things that you're looking for in the person that you hire to list your house? And what we don't want to do is be like, oh, that's me. But what you do is you use that information to, because that's all your instincts are saying that, you know, like how important is it to have a neighborhood expert list your house? You know, and some people that know that they're calling a neighborhood expert are their guards up already. Yeah, I mean, that's a 5, you know, and it's like, really, like, that's really a 5. But if somebody doesn't know that, they're like, that's a 10. So now you know that you want to come to the listing presentation with all the houses, or maybe all the houses that the office has sold around that neighborhood, in that neighborhood, because if it's really important to them, that's what you want to gear a lot of that paperwork that you're going to hand them about, is that stuff that they said was important. Another thing, like you'd mentioned, I always try to ask them if they know what the value of their house is. I want to know if they're wanting to play the crystal ball game before I get there. That way, when they throw it out at you, you're ready for it. And the crystal ball deal is when you show up and you're like, you know, how much do you think your house is worth? And they're like, I got a price in mind, but I want to see if that price is the same one that you say. And you're like, oh my gosh. I mean, I don't know if you think your house is worth 300 or 500. I mean, are you looking at Zillow? What are you looking at? So I kind of want to know up front if they want to play the crystal ball game, because that's a whole different way that you approach that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not that you're going to get to establish the price, because the house is going to sell what it's going to sell for, but I'm going to have a different conversation with you if you think we're at 350 and the market says 300. So you're not undervaluing yourself. You're still in charge of the conversation, but I'm going to have a real different conversation.
Sounds like someone who has, you know, a 3.5 out of 10 confidence scale in their listing presentation.
Yeah, right.
Maybe 4 now.
You guys are funny. So Rebecca, do we want to kind of break here and then do a part 2 on Monday, where we go deeper into the comp conversation and maybe take a look at some objection handlers?
Sounds good.
Awesome. So I put Rebecca's email in the chat a little